So where to begin? Let's see. Everyone sees Zoom meeting protocols on your screen right now? We're good? Awesome. Okay. Don't really have any. This is a small, intimate group right now. Shouldn't be too chaotic. So feel free to leave your microphone off mute so I can hear you. If you have questions, comments, insertions, including past travelers, feel free to interrupt and just speak over me. That's fine. If it gets a little bit out of hand, then I might ask us to hold off on some stuff, but I don't think that's going to happen right here. Although I do see that Jim Fellman's connected, so you never know. That's always risky. But yeah. Anyway, so let's Wild West free for all. And if you do have a significant amount of background
noise, going. Come on. Can we get started, please?
What's that? If it's okay with you, Jim, yeah, we'll get going.
Can we get started? Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So there we go. Anyway, so there we are. Let's see, what are we talking about here? So I gave a Zoom talk in September, a little over a year ago, trying to fill our Istanbul trip and our Egypt trip about a year in advance. And at the end of it, I gave this sort of teaser slide, and I said, this is a list of some of my favorite places in the world that I am eager to develop one of these quasi-organized trips for when I figured out how to do it. These are all favorite places of mine. Actually, I've not done the Swiss Alps yet. I've done everything else on here several times at least. But I'm not going to offer a trip like this until I sort of say, like, I've cracked the code. Like, I've figured out how to do the best trip that can be done in this place. And I do not exaggerate when I say this. I mean this. And I encourage you to keep me honest on this point that I make when I develop and offer something like this. Greenland, for example. I love Greenland. I don't know how to do Greenland with more than at most 6 people before the experience, the authentically Greenlandic experience, then it starts to suffer, it becomes watered down, it gets diluted. So I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure that there is a solution out there, but as long as it eludes me, I'm not going to offer it this way. But I still might say to some particularly adventuresome people in my life, like, hey, let's go to Greenland next week, and we'll go do that the way that we do. But Greenland, I haven't figured out how to do that in a way that doesn't suffer for offering it in this fashion. So a little over a year ago, I included Iceland on this list as one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there several times. I think I've been there 5 times at this point in time. Our first time was my wife and I went when she was pregnant for my daughter, who's now 21 years old. So that was, about 22 years ago, I guess. We went back before it was cool to go to Iceland. So I shared this at that time. Now, we had plans to do a trek in the Swiss Alps with a bunch of my pals in July of this year. And at about that point, 60 days or so beforehand, when we were just beginning to worry that, hey, Switzerland's not going to reopen to American tourists under COVID, we were getting nervous about that and wondering whether it was time to send the final deposit or not. Right about the exact same moment that Iceland was one of the first places to step forward and say, okay, vaccinated Americans are now allowed to enter as of July 1st with no issues and no overheads. So, wow, I sprung into action, reached out to everyone who was signed up for the Alps and said, hey guys, and I did a little presentation like this on Zoom and talked them all through it and said, I think we should switch from the Alps to Iceland for all these reasons. And Iceland has been on my list where I like to develop a trip like this, sort of solve it, crack the code. I think I know how to do it. And I said, so who wants to do that? And I said, I'm going if I get one other person in the room to go with me. And Chrissy Wallow raised her hand on the spot, said, I'm going. I'm like, great, Chrissy and I are going. Who else wants to come with us? And I said, by the way, I know you're all available for those 12 days because we can't get into France or Switzerland. So over the next couple of days, everyone agreed to go in that direction and tip towards Iceland. So that was sort of the genesis of me getting down to brass tacks and solving this. So this is with about 60 days notice before we were actually going to go. So I went down into my secret awesomification laboratory and disappeared for about 30 days. And I turned all the dials on my instruments up to 11. And I immersed myself in Iceland. And I got Joel involved in this. And I sent Joel 1,000 emails with links and said, we're going to absolutely become experts in this. We're going to excavate down to bedrock to find every single cool thing in Iceland. And we're going to put this all together and figure out the right way to do it. And now I had 15, 16, 17 of my favorite people in the world trusting me to do this right. So I had a blast truly doing this and pretty much only this for about 30 days. And I emerged from the lab and said, I got it. Here's what we're going to do. And everyone gave me a great big trust fall on that. Let me show you here, see if I can get my little pointer to work on my screen. Okay, so Iceland has what's known as the Ring Road. It's highway number 1 in Iceland, which roughly follows the coastline. About I don't know, 1,000 miles, give or take, to cover the whole thing. But see right here, it kind of cuts off right here. Can you all see my laser pointer on the screen? I don't know how visible. Hold on a second. Looks like it's not very visible. There we go. Kind of cuts off across it. Cuts off this thing called the West Fjords and the Snaefellsnes Peninsula right here, which are both amazingly awesome. I mean, to say awesome, like the West Fjords is just an altogether different thing. Just crazy remote. Most Icelanders have never been there. Very sparsely populated remote area. So just to give you an idea here, some friends and I, actually Becky and Ian, who are on the line right now, we did this back in 2008. We took 11 days to drive the Ring Road plus the West Fjords. I just Googled today while pulling these slides together, how many days to do the Iceland Ring Road? And conventional wisdom says you need at least 7 days to drive Iceland, more like 10. So they said, take your time, give it 10 days. We gave it 11 days, but still left with a sense of a whole bunch of unfinished business. So my approach with our gang this year in 2021 was we did 11 days last time. I said, we're going to slow down, take it easy, go more deeply into things. We're going to spend 14 days. So the original 12 days of our trek kind of expanded a little bit. I said, we're going to do a 14-day road trip around Iceland. And I put together an itinerary after doing all of my research for a month or so. And then that kind of crap, you say, oh, but we've got to show up a day early to hang in Reykjavik, and then you got to stay a day late. In the end, it was actually 16 days that almost all of us spent there for the trip. So this was the idea that we followed with 2021. Okay, so 14 days, and this is what we did. So here's what we did do. So we researched, vetted, curated, organized a bazillion different places, things, activities, sites, restaurants, hotels, and other options covering all the highlights of the entire country, and presented it all in an approximately clockwise sequential order according to our intended path over the course of those days. We made hotel reservations for 14 nights in 11 different locations. Okay. Going by the seat of your pants in Iceland for hotels doesn't really work. Okay, so we don't want to crimp down on spontaneity and flexibility, but especially when you get outside of a day's drive from Reykjavik, and especially during the main tourist season, it's severely capacity constrained. So there's not a whole lot of tourism infrastructure, and the demand is huge. So for example, we had 2 different hotel nights in some pretty remote little towns, and there were some snafus with the arrangements. In one case, they double booked us and someone else in one of the rooms that we had. Supposed to be we rented out the entire guest house, and we got there and someone was in Jim Fellman's room. So Jim, being Jim, rolled with the punches, and Jim literally slept on the couch out in the common area, out in the breakfast area for the night. But having arrived there, even though we did everything correctly at our end, having arrived there, it wasn't just that there were no more rooms in the inn. There was not one more room in this town or within a 20-mile drive of here. Everything was sold out. So that's important to understand. If you want to do Iceland, especially during this time of year, when we're going in the prime tourist season, everything will be sold out months in advance. And it's already a little bit late for us to be having this conversation, but I've checked availability in all the places that we want for the dates that we want in the last few days. And we're okay right now, but will we still be okay in a month? I don't know, but we'll have our arrangements nailed down by then anyway. So we make all the hotel reservations in advance. We tagged a bazillion different things on a custom developed Google map that I put together. And then we developed multiple alternative Strawman daily itineraries as potential resources to use throughout the trip. We rented 4 large 4x4 vehicles, and we split up according to family lines, intended speed, appetite. Jim said at the beginning he wanted to do everything on the list every day. So, okay, everyone is crazy. You want to try to keep up with Jim, grab the tiger by the tail and try to keep up, then you get in Jim's vehicle. So, like Matt Moore's on the line right now. Matt would shift a few times between, the middle of the road vehicle and the Fellman vehicle, trying to keep up as, from one day to the next. And the Durans stuck as a family in their large 9-person van for 5 people, and kind of tailed behind, did it slowly, took their time with things. So everyone kind of chose their own pace, if you want to approach. But we improvised. We made up all the rest on the fly, day by day, even hour by hour, as suited our mood. Okay. And we shared the best 14 nights touring Iceland that any 20 people have ever experienced. Okay. What we did not do, this is critical, we did not rent a single large bus to cart us all around Iceland. In the first week or so, I considered that as an option, but we agreed we didn't want that. That's too constraining. We have to all move at the same speed. We have to all do approximately the same thing. That's not fun. Now, all of a sudden, the experience is diminished by having 18 or 20 people instead of having just 3 or 4 people in your car with you, okay? We never attempted to carpool or move as a group or agree on anything or coordinate our 4 vehicles, okay? Carpooling was anathema. We're not gonna try to move at the same speed because then we all have to move at the slowest pace of anyone, okay? Or try to keep up with Jim Fellman, and that doesn't work either. We never hired a guide. Iceland, in my opinion, is not a place that benefits much or at all from a guide for most of the experience, okay? If you join me in Istanbul, if you join me in Egypt, those are places that can benefit deeply from a guide. So when I ask myself the question, what's the best Istanbul trip that we can do or the best Egypt trip, I find the best guide in the world. And I do not exaggerate with what I'm saying, okay? And if you join me on those trips, you know what I'm talking about. But I actually think we don't want a guide for Iceland, okay? We want, you need that flexibility to just go out and discover Iceland on your own terms every day. And we merely stack the deck in your favor by placing a bunch of the coolest things in your path and then nudging you, pointing you in the right direction, giving you a nudge, and then letting you figure it out and say, we'll see you at the hotel at night. Maybe we'll see you at dinner. Maybe we'll align for lunch in the middle of the day, but go do your own thing. And we never adhered to any fixed itinerary, okay? Those are the wrong things to do for Iceland, in my opinion. So that's what we did. That's what we did not do. Okay. I did an exercise yesterday. I said, you know what? I'm not gonna overwhelm people. I'm gonna pick the best 10 photos of the trip and just share those 10 highlight photos. Matt's already smiling. What are you smiling at, Matt?
That sounds completely impossible, but okay.
It's absurd. It was a stupid idea.
Yeah.
I did it in sincerity, spent 30 minutes, copy, paste. Now I've got to screw it. It was a stupid idea. It's not going to happen. So here's a few highlight photos of the thousands of highlights. But these are just totally random. But this was our trip for 14 days. And that's our last night. It's the only photo we ever managed to get of all 20 of us in the whole trip. We could not get us all in one place at one time, which speaks to some of the magic of this trip. And it was the last night after dinner. And we said, damn it, before you go back to the hotel and, check in for your flight, we're all going to get a picture right here. And if you look carefully, right there, that's Emily O'Newfer on a live FaceTime feed from home because she had to leave a day early. That was the only way we could get number 20 on the photo at one time. All right. So that was that trip. That's what we did. It was absolutely amazing. And it left me excited and energized to roll this out and go further. But the first thing I did when I got home was I sent everyone an email saying, here are 15 questions I want you to answer. Give us detailed, no holds barred feedback on every aspect of it so that Jewel and I can turn this into the greatest Iceland trip possible. And everyone agreed beforehand that those were part of the terms. They had to give us that feedback and to be as brutal as they needed to be for it. I'll spare you all the details. We've done the best we can to work all this into it. It was all good stuff, but there was one overwhelming piece of feedback that we received from this trip that was universal consensus, and I agree 100% on this. Despite having spent almost double what most people spend doing a road trip in Iceland, the overwhelming piece of feedback was slow down, spend more time in a few of the coolest spots. The West Fjords, the little town of Seyðisfjörður, the remote region of Thorsmork in the Central Highlands. If necessary, cover less distance, see fewer things, and see them more deeply. Overwhelming consensus that these were good ideas for us. And I agree with that completely. Okay, so here's what I've done since then, among other tweaks, but most of the rest are tweaks. Okay. This was the itinerary that we followed this year in the numbers. 14 nights on road trip, 11 different locations. 6 days were what I would call major driving days of 4 hours or more, okay, to get from point A to point B and see all the cool stuff along the way. And the longest drive day was like a 6-hour day. when getting across the remote north at one point. 5 minor driving days where relocating to the next hotel, the next place was 3 or fewer hours. In some cases, it was an hour or 2 hours, relatively minor. And we had 3 days where we stayed put in one particularly sublime location. Okay, in the West Fjords, we spent 2 nights in a row in one place in the little hostel we were in Seyðisfjörður, which is just a mind-blowing, beautiful little town on the extreme east coast, and also where else? In Skaftafell National Park. Okay, so what we did for this itinerary now, and I'm trying to do the best Iceland trip that can be done, is we added 6 days to this. Okay, and it looks something like this. So 14 nights on road trip became 20 nights. And those 6 days that we added were all hunkering down in one of these 3 really special places that warrant more time. Okay. So otherwise, it's mostly the same itinerary. We just inserted these extra days at these critical points along the way. Okay. Also, this year, at the midpoint of our 14 days, Emily and my wife, Kim, actually met us on day 7 in the little town of Seyðisfjörður in the extreme east. So halfway through, not everyone has 2 weeks to take off. That was Emily's situation. Kim, if she has too much awesome at one time, she breaks out in a rash. So she doesn't want to push that too far. So she joined. She joined halfway in. So it's very easy to fly into Reykjavik from North America, and then there are several direct flights every day. It's like a 1-hour hop from the Reykjavik city airport to the little town of Seyðisfjörður. So she split that in half. Now this is a 3-week trip. That's now my answer to the question. What's the best trip that can be done in Iceland if you align with this type of travel as something that gets you excited? It's 3 weeks to do it and do it properly, in my view. And to spend this amount of time, not everyone has 3 weeks, but it does nicely split down the middle into part A and part B by either leaving in Seyðisfjörður or starting in Seyðisfjörður. Okay. There's a little bit of question with one-way vehicle rentals, which are really expensive in Iceland if you do one way, but maybe we can coordinate someone doing part A and then handing off a vehicle. And if not, I've worked the one-way rental vehicles into the budget also. So it's all in there. But so here's part A. Shows that this is the northern route. We land in Reykjavik right here, if you can follow my laser pointer. And we go all the way around. We actually take the ferry, a 3-hour car ferry across to the remote West Fjords, hang out there for several days, come back here, and then we work our way around to Seyðisfjörður. And that takes 10 days, including 3 nights in Seyðisfjörður at the end of that. Okay. And that is followed with part B, which starts in Seyðisfjörður with 3 nights there. Okay. And then we work along the southern route, seeing a whole bunch of cool stuff before we finish up in Reykjavik. All right. So part A and part B is the way that we're organizing this right now. The question of which part's better, part A or part B. Okay. I go insane thinking about this because I can't bear to leave anything
Part
out.
A. Part A.
Part A. We have the answer. It is part A. I've shared this for those who are kind of parsing that out. Now, we might not do both parts depending on how much enthusiasm we have for this and how it all plays out. But my brother-in-law and my 2 nephews and my niece and my son and I are already in. We had the discussion a few days ago. We're already in for part B. Okay, so we're doing that at the back end of all this. And my son and my 1 nephew at least are in for probably the whole thing regardless. Okay. But I shared this one slide. I won't go into it in detail, but differences, qualitative differences between the 2 as to which one's better. But I have to emphasize that these are differences of degree. Okay. They're not like fundamental screaming differences, but they are distinct differences, but they're differences of degree. But broadly speaking, part A, the northern part, is much more remote, far fewer people there, much less tourism infrastructure. And in the south, there tends to be a lot more going on there. But either way, these are still matters of degree. Okay. 30 seconds or less. Anyone who was there want to comment on part A versus part B? Jim, you have an opinion there? Anyone else?
Really part A. And when you're driving in part A, there's a good chance you're going to see whales and other amazing sights. So don't let the driving scare you.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, watch out for the tunnels with the speed traps.
Yeah. You, before we go, you will
That,
all be
that,
required.
that's important advice. Yeah, definitely do that.
These are the two guys who both got speeding tickets in the same tunnel 1 minute apart. And what was it? $270 and $400. Is that right, guys? They take
That's
this.
about right.
That's about right.
Yeah. Anyway, but I'll share this PowerPoint with anyone who wants to see it, so you can go through that in detail. All right. Here's the deal. This is what this is. At the end of this slide, you should know the basics to know whether you want to do this or not. Okay. And then I can help you decide to figure out the best way to do it, which might not be traveling with us for real. Okay. Here's the deal. Here's our design philosophy. We want to offer all the benefits and service of a custom organized tour. Okay. Plus all the freedom and flexibility of a completely independent road trip. Those tend to be in tension with one another, but there's no fundamental reason they need to be. Okay. And we want to do it all at a more than 50% discount to the comparable retail street price for what we're offering. And we are for real. And what's going on here? You know, and then the simple answer is because we're not trying to make a profit on this, you know, which sounds like, you know, too good to be true. But that's the reality. We'll talk about that a little bit later if you haven't already heard this stuff from us. What's the trip about? This is a road trip. It's about getting out there and experiencing nature at its finest with a few of the people you most want to share it with. Got that? Now, if you don't have a small group, one vehicle's worth. It could be a couple in one vehicle. You could rent a van that holds 9 people and get 6 people in it, plus luggage, okay? But this is a road trip, and it's about getting out there and experiencing nature at its finest with the people you most want to share it with, okay? If you don't like nature, it's not your thing. If you don't have that many people that you want to spend that kind of time with in nature, out there experiencing it, it's not your thing, okay? And when I say this is the best trip that can be had, it's very important. I'm not saying this is the best trip that can be done at this budget, okay? I'm really not saying that. If you're a billionaire, what's the best way to do Iceland? You still do it as a road trip, okay? That's the way to experience Iceland, in my opinion. You don't do it by helicopter because you can afford it. You lose something. Okay. You don't do an organized trip in a bus with a tour guide. Iceland is not the time and place to do that. If you need to for budget purposes or for other reasons, logistically, okay, but that's not the best trip that you can do. This is the best way that you can do Iceland, regardless of resources. Okay. We are handling every possible detail for you, both in advance and during the trip. When I say we, I mean Jewel, by the way. Okay. Just so we're clear on that. And during the trip. So you can just show up and experience the very best Iceland has to offer with negligible pre-planning, overhead, or ongoing hassles. This is an active trip that encourages you to get up close and personal with nature, with many optional opportunities to turn the dial up to 11 on the epic hardcore athleticism scale, or dial it all the way back depending on your mood, okay? So you can go all the way to 11 on the athleticism scale, but don't be intimidated by that. You don't have to be insane and try to keep up with Jim Fellman, okay? You choose your own pick. Now, if you can't agree with the people in your car that you're bringing with you, you've got a problem there. I can't help you with that one, okay? You need to be able to align and get along with those people as your primary group on this. Also, importantly, from a budget standpoint, we generally seek the best available accommodations. Wherever we're going, we seek the best, most comfortable available accommodations and dining options with little regard for price. I almost want to say with no regard for price in the approach, in our sort of default approach, okay? Little regard for the price, but only to the extent that additional comfort is not at the expense of the best possible authentic experience, okay? We will not give up 1 ounce of authentic Icelandic experience for a pound of additional comfort, okay? Fortunately, Iceland delivers very well. And these two aren't in tension all that much, but there are a couple of places in the West Fjords, very remote, in Thorsmork, where the best available accommodations are a lot more Spartan, okay? But you still got to go there. You still got to be in those places, so you take the best that's available, okay? And they're always comfortable. They're always comfortable, in my view. So that's the approach. That's what this trip is about. The rest is a whole lot of details, but you should already maybe know. Some of you might already be thinking like, oh yeah, that's not my cup of tea. Fair enough. You know, join us in Egypt on the 5-star luxury cruise that's 0 athleticism and you're never going to be cold or wet. And we've got the the greatest historical expert in the world, sharing his stuff with us. But that's what this trip's about. Details: it's a self-drive road trip with your own plan and your own separate independent vehicle. Okay. The accommodations, we said, are all booked in advance. That's just a necessary logistical thing in Iceland this time of year. If you're planning on staying in hotels and not like camping it and slumming it, you can't show up in a town and expect to get any hotel room on the fly, or even a week in advance in many cases. It's Iceland is sold out in advance this time of year. Each day's itinerary options are heavily researched, vetted, curated, and organized, but only gently suggested and never prescribed or constrained. Let's see, Jewel and I will be available the night before and throughout each day to help you plan out your own perfect day in Iceland. So over dinner, over a beer, we'll sit down, talk through the materials we put together. There's a couple of different recommended itineraries just to get you thinking, but then every day we share 3 days worth of stuff that you could do the next day on your way to the next spot. Okay, so we help you figure that out. The trip is escorted but not guided. Okay, Iceland is best discovered individually and on your own terms. And we work very hard to preserve maximum flexibility for you and your group to be spontaneous and discover your own perfect adventure each day. We just stack the odds heavily in your favor for that. And Jewel is your 24/7 concierge. She's available throughout for all arrangements, reservations, tickets, other support, and so on. And as for me, once I get there, I'm out there just having fun along with you guys and my family. And I am available to help encourage that and nudge it along and make sure you're having a great time. But I'm just there having fun like you guys are. And I'm not being paid a nickel for any of this myself. This is just a way to create the opportunity for some other fun people to come along. So that's what the trip is about. Those are details. Typical day on the road, about half our days are on the road where you have to, actually relocate to another spot. Breakfast is always included. Depart and arrive on whatever schedule you want. This is one example for one day's itinerary. They give 2 different itineraries, sort of the base itinerary and what we were calling the Jim Fellman itinerary, the 11 out of 10. Do everything and show up exhausted at 10 o'clock at night, having skipped lunch and maybe dinner. Let's see. I will generally chart a course somewhere in between the base and the Fellman itinerary, making sure not to miss any of the highlights. And I'll share that approach, my plans, with other people along the way. And you're welcome to follow me along with that, but you're also free to depart from it. Okay. Jewel will generally go ahead to handle the check-in details, make sure everything's in order prior to everyone's arrival. Check-in in some of these little places can be a real pain in the tail. So Jewel will try to get ahead and a couple of hours beforehand and do it all for you. So you show up and she's like, here's your key, here's your room, get that all taken care of. Some of these little towns that have 3 hotels and 2 restaurants and are completely overbooked and oversold beforehand. Actually, it can be a bit of a cluster at the front desk trying to we just sometimes waiting in line an hour when all the stars align against us for that. So she's going to go ahead to try to make that not even noticeable. Group dinner reservations are made in advance for the whole group only when necessary, because there's literally only one restaurant, only one option. And that happens on a few occasions. Especially in the north, in the West Fjords and the more remote areas. That's a typical day on the road. And about half our days we're staying put. You wake up and go to sleep in the same place, in the same bed. And same idea, but even more open-ended. We'll just provide several days worth of awesomeness. If we're staying put somewhere, it's because this is a very, very special place that has a lot of really cool stuff. So all those options are presented in the same idea. The night before or during or throughout, we're available to answer questions, to guide you, to help you understand what the best possible thing is that you want to do that day. And we, by which I mean Jewel, will handle all the details for you that can be handled for you. Okay. And we've also developed specific resources. This was a key to what I did during that month in my secret underground lair. Building the itinerary. We've got about a 20-page PDF handout that describes all of this. I was very flattered. Jim Fellman, probably 4 or 5 days into our trip this year, said, "Hey, you should find a way to sell that, and sell the PDF to people and license that out and so on." And I'm flattered to hear that. And if you receive the email, I gave everyone a link to that. Okay, so it's yours. It's free. Take it. Use it. We will only be flattered if you steal it and use it and go do something awesome as a result of the work we've done on this. Also, the link to the trip map. There are over 100 different tags scattered throughout Iceland of all the cool stuff that you should maybe think about wanting to do. Okay, steal it, use it. And we're updating that continuously based on new information. Okay, so these are the resources that we develop. All right, who should do this trip? These are the actual feedback items that we got from the 20 people on the trip this time. Who should do this trip? I'm not judging them, I'm just sharing them. Okay, someone who can roll with the punches and enjoy the experience, knowing it will not be perfect. People who are willing to give over responsibility to others, aka Jewel, for the planning and execution details of a trip. People with the funding available to not need to worry about the costs. Okay, some of us need to focus on that, and maybe we need to have a separate conversation. Okay, so people with the funding available to not need to worry about the cost. Iceland is notoriously expensive, and it can bite you in the ass if you're not paying attention. We've worked very hard to try to cover everything so there's no unpleasant surprises. Okay, and a lot of the feedback that I received from people was to do a better job on that. I think we have done a better job this time around. Someone who enjoys hiking, likes to take pictures, likes being outdoors. People with a full understanding of the weather they could encounter and a willingness to get out in it to experience the island. Adventuresome people willing to be flexible about the daily itinerary. People who are in shape and easygoing. Nature lovers. People who can travel light. Those who look great in rain gear. Although we had, the weather gods smiled on us. We had perfect weather for our first, I want to say 10 days. But then, then they tried to kill us for 48 hours, the weather gods. A person who wants to see Iceland, enjoys hiking, and doesn't mind being on the move for 2 weeks. And people who can look beyond minor inconveniences to see the deeper magic of a place. Physically active people who want to get out in nature and really deeply experience an amazing place. Who should not do this trip? Feedback from the same people, their actual words. People who dislike when they are not taking care of themselves and are terrible at letting people do things for them. By people, we mean Jewel, I assume. Picky eaters. In a few cases, especially in the more remote areas, more in part A than part B. Okay, the food you get is what you get, and we're just happy to have a meal there. In the one place in the West Fjords, we almost a few days beforehand, we realized we were going to have to just stop at a convenience store along the way and just do like potluck, whatever we got at the convenience store, and that was our dinner for the night. But Joel managed to persuade them to make us dinner. But if you didn't like seafood, or the spaghetti, you were out of luck. Homebodies. People who get car sick. I hope that's not obvious at this point, but I don't know. People who need a vacation to slow down and decompress. People who can't be on the move and who don't enjoy the long drives. Anyone who doesn't enjoy hiking and who can't be frequently on the move. Someone not willing to be tired, try new foods, be flexible, roll with the changes and unexpected issues that arise. A high maintenance person should not ever consider this trip. And if you don't love nature and being out in it, there is no reason at all to do this trip. Okay. So hopefully you're all getting your head around this, deciding whether you're still interested or not. Reasons it might not be a good fit for you. Again, a lot of time in the vehicle. Lodging is sometimes whatever's available. Might be shared bathroom facilities, might be dormitory style. There wasn't a lot of that, but there was a tiny little bit of that sort of thing. The food is occasionally whatever is available. There is no theoretical limit to how bad the weather could be or for how long. If you hate waterfalls, this is not your place. Iceland is notoriously expensive. We've done our best to include most charges right up front in the base itinerary and scope, with sober guidance for the rest to minimize unpleasant surprises. But expenses in Iceland have a way of getting away from you if you don't pay attention. Okay. A couple of extra beers in the bar at night without paying attention, like, woo, you'll be really, those are just 2 beers. Yep. Okay. If you're not good at or don't enjoy traveling light, packing up all your stuff and moving on to the next spot when necessary. You're not good at being ready on time to go at the appointed spot on those occasions when group harmony necessitates that behavior. You're afraid of being murdered by a cabal of your traveling companions because of the previous couple of bullets. You think fjords are boring. You suffer from severe kenophobia, that's fear of wide open spaces. There's gonna be a lot of them. And there's a lot of walking and hiking and generally being outdoors. This ranges from many small strolls of 5 minutes to go see the cool thing from the pull-off to an hour or 2 to 2 or 3 truly epic, fully committed and potentially intimidating, but very optional athletic hikes that are all day affairs of 10 miles, 12 miles. Matt and Jim did the 19-mile one that the weather gods frightened the rest of us off on, for example. And this is from our frequently asked questions archives. Okay, important FAQ. So hopefully you're self-selecting by now, and you know whether you still are interested in this. But this is now, I need to nudge you now. Okay, what if I'm a whiny, high-maintenance prima donna who doesn't travel well, or play nice with others, or can't roll with the inevitable punches that come with this mode of travel? Okay, stay home, don't come. This is a private invitation-only affair with a strict no assholes policy. Okay. We've been sharing this for years. For our Iceland trip, or excuse me, for our Istanbul trip in September, Jewel had one of these, who was not someone who was invited, but she was invited by someone who was invited by someone who was on our invite list. So she wasn't someone's +1, she was the +1's +1, okay? And after like a week of bullshit back and forth with emails with this person who refused to get on the phone and just de-escalate a whole bunch of nonsense, Jewel called me and said, I've spent like an hour with this person today. What am I supposed to do? And I said, nope, I'll handle it. Just check your email a few minutes. So we fired her unceremoniously. And this was a paying customer, and it was a not full trip, you know, and we were losing money on that trip because COVID scared most of our people away at that point in time. This was Istanbul in September, but we don't care. We're going to keep it classy. And people like that are not invited. And I spent too much of my life and my career dealing with toxic, dysfunctional, broken people, and they're not allowed to come and play with us. So there we are. A little piece of bonus awesomeness. We're going to be there right through, before, during, and after the summer solstice. It will never get dark while we are there. Okay. On the solstice, we're only at one point, maybe 20 miles south of the Arctic Circle. The sun will set at 1 a.m. and it will rise again 29 minutes later, I think. Okay, so it will never get dark. You'll always be able to read a book outside if the weather cooperates. So I did this. I tried to put together, I'm like, I just got to share a few highlights, go a little deeper with you guys, just to get a sense, get you really excited. And I gave it like a few minutes, and I'm like, oh, if I've got 20 highlights and I'm still counting, I guess they aren't highlights, are they? So I didn't. So I don't know what to do with it. So I decided I'm just going to pick one, and I could have picked anything on here. So everyone who was there, everyone who traveled with us could pick any one of these, and we could go on for an hour just sharing what we did during that day while we were in this spot. But I'll share our roughly 24 hours in Thorsmork with everyone. Okay, Thorsmork is a very remote area. It's where in ancient Icelandic history, when you were convicted of murder or some serious crime, they didn't have capital punishment. They just banished you to Thorsmork and figured you'd just die there naturally anyways. Like, that's for real. That's historically. They push you on the far side of the river, and you're just done. And they actually said if you survived there for 20 years, you were actually your sentence was commuted. You come back and enter society. But almost no one ever did. So we'll start with the waterfalls that you can go behind. Okay, there's a couple of waterfalls side by side in this one area in Iceland, and you can walk behind them because the river just flows over the cliff, and but it's kind of undercut behind. So if you look right there, to give you a sense of the scale, see this? That's a person right there. That little tiny dot right under there, okay? So here's another view of it at sunset. You know, I mean, it's freaking Iceland. It's just everywhere. So why do we start with the waterfall that you can walk behind? Not because this is particularly, you know, amazing by Iceland standards. It's because that's where the bus stop is to catch the bus to go to Thorsmork, okay? You want to go to Thorsmork, you have to take the special bus on the giant jacked up tires, because to get to Thorsmork, the road that goes there goes right through the frickin' river, and there's no bridges getting across there, okay? So you can't take even a regular 4x4 vehicle across. So you got to take the bus. So we pick up the bus there. The bottom right picture is the picture that I got out my window in the middle of the river. Okay, this is off the bus company's website, but that's the same crossing. And here's the shots of us going through the river. So to get there, you got to go through the special bus.
You can walk there.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can walk.
Yeah. Said Jim. Yeah, that's a totally different highlight on the list, though. Yeah, Jim and Matt walked the 19 miles, including about 5,000 feet of elevation gain from the coast that day, while the weather gods tried to kill them. And I and my sprained ankle bowed out at about the 3rd mile at the beginning of it. But yes, you can walk there. So we get there. And again, we choose the best available accommodations, which in Thorsmork is the heated glamping tents. I love that there were several people who were not as well traveled and maybe not as hardcore, who were completely nervous about staying in the tents when we got there. See, Jewel is laughing right now, okay? Because you know who I'm talking about. They're like a little bit panicky. Oh my God, we're driving through a river. What? We're going where? Like, what's the deal with that? And I love, there's like an inverse relationship. The more anxiety people had about something like this, those were the people who at the end were just like, oh my God, that was the greatest thing we ever did. They were perfectly comfortable. They were heated. They were delightful. And everyone at the end said, oh my God, that's one of those 3 spots where we have to hunker down and spend more time. And it is one of those spots. We're allowing extra time for the modified itinerary. So we spent the night there. In the morning, we got to get back out. And I always ask, what is the best possible trip that can be had? And I didn't want us to be forced to adhere to the bus schedule on the way out, the public bus schedule. So I said to Jewel, you've got to find someone who has those giant ass vehicles who will come and give us a ride out on our schedule. Find one of those like high-end tour groups that'll do this and just see what they can offer. We want the platinum version of all of it. Okay. So we woke up, had an amazing night's sleep, wake up, and we had our 2 we had our 2 Viking tour guides with their giant jacked up vehicles waiting for us in the morning to take us on a tour here. So if you look at here, there's one of our 2 Icelandic tour, our Viking tour guides with 2 Kuzmans. Icelandic Vikings are very large people, and Kuzmans are very small humans. There were 3 Kuzman sisters. Jen, you're probably in the photo somewhere, but they're so small it's hard to tell necessarily. When I saw this, I immediately thought of this. It reminded me of something from Lord of the Rings. Anyway, so we had 2 driver guides with 2 of these jacked up vehicles waiting for us to take us for the day and show us Thorsmork. So several pictures here. First, we just from our campsite, we walked to the top of the mountain, did a hike for a couple of hours, I guess, to the top of the mountain so we could see Thorsmork from above. Here's a couple shots of that. Then we came back down, hopped in our vehicles, and they drove us onto another spot. And we hopped out at this spot and walked along this stream in a canyon for, I don't know, maybe a half a mile or so to a really cool slot canyon. On the way into the slot canyon, we have to cross a pretty deep swift stream. If you're not good with that, you have your Viking guide carry you across. They were more than happy to do that. So we got up into the little slot canyon, hung out there for half an hour, 45 minutes, just in awe, taking pictures, worked our way back down. Again, have your Viking guide carry you back across the other direction if you don't want to get your feet wet, don't want to be swept away. Then we hopped in the vehicles and they drove us to a different spot in the middle of freaking nowhere. They had a team of 3 chefs preparing a barbecue meal for us that for the majority of us who eat lamb, it was the best lamb we've had in our lives. Not an exaggeration. The best lamb we've ever had in our lives, like just amazing gourmet meal in the middle of freaking nowhere in a context that's just mind-blowing. So we finished lunch, spent a couple of hours there. Oh, beer and wine served. Spent a couple of hours there, hopped in the vehicles, started to drive out. So we saw a massive rainbow because, well, Iceland, you know. So see the rainbow in Iceland, you got to stop and you got to pose for the rainbows. So we all took our turns posing for the rainbows. Our Viking driver guides made us take a picture of them crashing through the river with the rainbow on the back because it'll look good in their brochure, and that's kind of their thing, right? Crashing through the river with that's a photo we took of our guide driving through it. I, of course, have to get a shot of me farting a rainbow because, well, it looks good in the brochure and that's my thing. So, and this is an actual photo taken from one of our 2 vehicles of my vehicle crossing back over in the river on our way out of Thorsmork. Okay. If I'm being honest, that's less than 24 hours right there I just described. Okay. But that's Iceland. Okay. Like I could have picked any other day. But that's Iceland for us. And the whole time, Matt and Jim are thinking like, yeah, while you're doing that, we walked there. You know, they had their own adventure to tell, but you got to pick one thing. Okay. But I have to add this on here just for completeness. So we drove about an hour and a half to our next hotel. It's we went, had dinner. It's like 11 o'clock at night, but it never gets dark. So these are naturally heated pools right outside our hotel. So we all hung out there for a bit. And then it's a little before midnight. I retired and we're trying to get to sleep. And Fellman and a few other jackasses are out there still carousing at midnight in the river. So Kim goes out and hollers at him, shakes her little fist, says, "Shut up, guys, we're trying to get to sleep." 20 minutes later, I can still hear Fellman's voice going on out there. And I turned to Kim and I said, "You know, it'd be hilarious to just call the front desk and tell them there's some jackass Americans out in the river who won't shut up. And could you go out there and holler at them for us?" And we were just reflecting, we agreed immediately that would be hilarious. And we were just reflecting on whether I was serious or not. I agreed that it was funny before I considered whether I was serious or not. And then I heard the guy in the next room over, not related to our party, go out and holler at him. And then so there you go. So that's a little more than 24 hours to get that little bit in, but I like bookending it with random foreign tourists hollering at Jim Fellman saying, "Shut the hell up, we're trying to sleep." That's one day. That's one day of Iceland. I could have picked any other day and told you the story. That's what this trip is. That's what Iceland is, if you do it the right way. Several more, again, my top 10, here are just 100 or so of my top 10 highlight photos from our trip. Whole other story right there. One of the most remote spots on the planet in Hornstrander Reserve. No people there, 3-hour boat ride to get there to do the hike. 2,000-foot sheer cliffs directly into the ocean, in the Greenland Sea. Me farting out another rainbow. Let's see. This is us eating in, and I do not exaggerate, my favorite restaurant in the world. And I don't give it any bonus points because it happens to be in this little remote town of 2,000 people in the remote West Fjords on its own merits for aesthetics and food quality and culinary and all that kind of stuff. It is my favorite restaurant in the world. And several of the foodie types in our group are of the same opinion, having traveled the world to a whole bunch of places. That's in Isafjordur in the West Fjords. Let's see. More coolness. Again, just on how do you find a top 10 photos for all this? You know, you just can't do it. Natural hot pools everywhere. I mean, the total number that we collectively hopped in, I mean, had to be 20. Matt, you're shaking your head. It had to be at least 20.
Oh yeah, easy.
Yeah.
And we skipped a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. We skipped so much along the way because you got to keep moving. At some level, you got to keep going, but there's just so much Iceland to embrace. So there were just
this is a very Matt definition of 10 photos.
Yeah, these are just 100 or so of my top 10. Okay, and I felt silly. Our last day on the way out, I got this photo in the airport, and I texted it to our entire group with apologies. Apparently, we could have saved all the hassle and cost and just gone to Reykjavik and done the 1-hour virtual reality Iceland flyover experience. So I do feel kind of foolish. So that's an option you could all do if you're interested. So, all right. So you know what the trip's about now. Okay, now let's get to the bad news. All right, which isn't that terrible, but it depends on your circumstances. All right, here's what we're looking at. These aren't firm prices. There's good reasons why they aren't firm yet. This is still a work in progress. Okay, based on current retail pricing. So I've confirmed every price on here with an available retail price for the hotels we want, for the cars that exist. This could all have been booked in recent days. Okay, based on current retail pricing for all of it, the hotels, rentals, and all the other in-scope items. And I want to emphasize our guided day out of Thorsmork with our 2 Viking guides and the 2 jacked up vehicles and the crazy gourmet meal in the middle of nowhere. That was very, very expensive. That combined for the transfer, the meal, the tour was about $350 per person for the whole thing. When I asked what's the best that can be had, that's built into the pricing here. Okay, so we've covered all that is known and is default in the scenario. So that's in the pricing with what we're looking at here, that kind of stuff. If we know that it's part of the trip and that you're going to be constrained by it. Part A, we can do for $3,300 per person. Part B, $3,500. Okay. These are all subject to change with no notice until the services are booked and confirmed. Okay. Our margins are spectacularly thin. They're razor thin and just barely plausible economically. Okay. Why? Because we're doing this for friends and family. That's what motivates us. But that means you're not going to get a firm price from us because this could all change. Okay. The scope of inclusions and exclusions is explained here. That also includes the cost of the vehicle. That's on the assumption that it's 4 people sharing a RAV4. Okay, there are cheaper vehicle options. There are more expensive vehicle options, but that's a good, decent option. You also don't need a 4x4, but that's a separate conversation for you and me to have when you get to that point to decide whether you think you should have one or not. Okay, but a lot of places you might want to go, you'll wish you had a 4x4. And a lot of places where you want to go, it's a clear violation of the rental agreement. And in a way that when you get there, you're like, oh, yeah, maybe I should have had that. Okay, that's a separate discussion now. Comparable retail pricing. I always compare myself to Wilderness Travel. Okay, Wilderness Travel is an excellent outfit. I've used them multiple times. I just spent 12 days in the Galapagos with WT in October, just a month ago. I also spent 12 days on the Inca Trail with WT just a couple weeks ago in November, along with Jim and Matt, right? Jim and Matt Moore on the call right here. They are an excellent, excellent organization. I always try to make sure that as my reality check, I find WT's comparable offering to what we're doing. And I want to make sure that ours is better than theirs and at a huge discount to theirs. Okay. They have 2 different offerings. WT charges $7,000 for a 7-night guided, which I think is not a benefit for Iceland, fixed itinerary public group tour, as compared to our $3,500 for 10 nights. Okay, or 3,300 in the north. All right, that's a pretty fair direct comparison. They include all the meals in there, so that's a little bit of an apple where it's not quite apples to apples. But ours is for 10 nights instead of 7. So on an apples to apples comparison, ours is at less than half the cost of WT. And WT I hold in very high regard, and I'm a customer, and I'm a loyal repeat customer, and will continue to be into the future. Okay, it's not complicated. WT, they have huge marketing costs. They have business development. They have a full staff. They're a real big company at scale, and they need to make a profit margin on this. And I don't, I don't grudge them their well-earned profits. But as a point of comparison, this is a great comp. And they use basically they use the same or inferior hotels to ours in their numbers. Okay, for real. My cousin just sent me this today. For those of us in the Warren County area. Chautauqua Institution, very highly regarded institution in our area. My cousin, knowing we were doing this tonight, sent this. Didn't know they were doing this stuff yet. They offer a 6-night guided tour, group tour, roughly our same dates, early July, for $5,300. And I looked at it, and it's crap. Like 2 nights outside of Reykjavik in a crap hotel. Just amazing. Like ours is hands down superior in every respect. And they only barely get out of Reykjavik, which is not, I mean, Reykjavik's cool, but it's not why you go there, I hope. So another comparable example here. So cultured travel, I say we have advanced and matured to where it's not just Matt McKissick doing all of this on his own with his own free time. It's a whole lot of that, but it's not only that. And being self-insured and having no insurance and charging no markup whatsoever and always taking a loss on these things, which is what I did for years. We're now doing this through Cultured Travel. If you're not familiar with this, so Jewel and I formed Cultured Travel together in the last couple of years. My goal is to debottleneck, accelerate, and enable, freeing me up, reducing the personal workload. So I get to focus on the really fun stuff that I like to do, sort of in my secret lab, creatively planning out and creating the greatest thing that anyone could do in these places. And I want to develop, launch, and lead as many of these truly epic adventures as we can effortlessly fill. Okay. I'm not trying to make a nickel on this. It's not my best investment. It's one of my worst investments, financially speaking. Okay. And I don't expect to ever have a good financial return for my own inputs on this. Joel's goal is that this is her dream job. Okay. Her definition of success is to grow this to where it's stable enough for her to switch careers without making too much of a pay cut. Actually, this is from a year and a half ago. Okay. She actually quit her job subsequent to this being out a year and a half ago when we first put it out. Okay. So she's doing that right now. So we have cost advantages as a listed agency. So when Jewel goes and arranges this, she gets very real discounts to retail, up to 20, 25%, depending on the stuff she's booking. Okay, huge advantage. She goes direct to local service provider. We cut out all the middlemen. Our markup is razor thin. We have negligible operating overheads. Our only advertising and marketing budget is doing an occasional Zoom call like this. This is our whole advertising right here for these efforts. So there's no money spent on that. And my time is always free. I never charge you or Cultured a penny for my efforts. And I'm actually paying my own way for us to go and do this in Iceland if you guys want to join me, for real. Okay, not only am I not getting paid for it, like I'm paying my own way for me and my family to do this. Okay, so that's why we can do this impossibly low pricing. We're motivated by something different in this. We just want to make the awesome happen. Okay, Jewel shared this with me before a talk we gave in September a year ago, and I think one of these people is on the line here. Maybe also Jewel and I were discussing it that day. She said, this is going to be really easy for me to talk about the joy behind this project, as some of the most influential, awesome people in my life will, or at least are supposed to be in attendance for the call. Okay, this is what animates us to do this. So our pricing philosophy, we're not trying to make a profit. My financial circumstances in life are I have no need whatsoever to make a profit. It can't make a difference in my world, as many of you know. But we do need to make financial ends meet. Okay, but we don't care about a profit. If we can make them just barely balance while covering our thin overheads and compensating Jewel for her efforts, that is our definition of success. As long as we get to make the awesomeness happen and we get to come along. Okay, we mean this next piece. Now, a bunch of you out there, I know who you are and you know who you are. You're saying 3,500 bucks, 7K for the whole thing, piece of cake, spare pocket change. I know who you are and you know who you are, and you're paying full price. Okay, our very low full price. Okay. Also, others of you out there, I know 3,500 bucks is a big deal. You know who you are and I know who you are. Okay. If that does not work for you and you're on this call, we want you to be able to come and we want you to have a separate conversation with us. We are willing to waive that margin. We are willing to do this at below our cost and take a loss on it. We're willing to have conversations about how you can have some alternate arrangements made that aren't necessarily in the bestest, most expensive hotels along the way. Let's have that conversation. We're doing this because we want this stuff to happen and we want you to come with us. Okay. So I know who you are and you know who you are. You have to have that separate conversation with us. And I've actually scoped out like what alternative arrangements can be made. And I've got current pricing on this, and we could knock quite a bit off the cost of this by changing some of the arrangements and Jewel agreeing to reduce or waive the fee. And we're very open to that, and there's no stigma attached to that. Okay, our mission is epic experiences in spectacular places with awesome people. There's nothing in there about profit. Okay, so if we stick to that, like the numbers will take care of themselves in the long run, and they appear to be doing just that. Okay, because there's enough of you out there in our orbit who can afford to pay it, and we're charging enough of a margin that we can squeak by, and it'll work. What's the catch? By the way, this is a reminder for several of you. Okay, if you travel with us, and if it is as advertised, and if it is every bit as awesome as it should be, that's for you to assess. If it's not all three of those, you're off the hook. If it is, you owe us 2 future referrals for every time you join us on a trip. That's a binding commitment that you've made. That's how we keep it classy. That's how we keep this awesome machine going without us having to spend any money or put any real effort into the sales or the marketing side of things. Okay, so that's a reminder to several of you who've already had these awesome experiences. Like, oh, yeah, you do still owe us 2 of these. Not referrals. I mean, people, awesome people who actually do come and travel with us. That's part of your price. Okay, you still owe us on that. And if you come along on this trip and you agree that you traveled with us, it was as advertised and it was as awesome as it should have been, you owe us 2. If 2 of you come, you owe us 4. Okay, and I'm looking at you guys out there. I'm looking at you and you and you and you. So, okay, so there you go. So that's part of the price. That is part of the catch. There are alternatives that are still fully awesome that don't involve signing up for this trip with us. It can still be the best trip in the world or darn close to it. Okay, you can skip us altogether, steal our stuff, steal the map, steal the itinerary, rent your own car and go solo. That's awesome. Okay, you can do that. If you're going to do that, You can also have Jewel make the arrangements for you. Okay. We were setting this up several months ago, and my friends, the Eckerts, overheard some of the conversation, and they heard that, Iceland was reopening, and they said, holy crap, we want to do this. How do we do it? And I'm like, here's my stuff. Go ahead and take it. And I said, but Jewel actually gets really big discounts for this stuff. And she's already having these conversations. Why don't you just have her like glom yours onto ours? And so they went like 10 days ahead of us and did basically the same trip. And he said, well, how much is he going to charge? I said, I don't know. You have that conversation with Jewel. She'll figure it out. And Jewel charged them less than the discounts and commissions that she got, which she passed on to them 100%, which I kind of gave her heck about. So they got it for like $200 off retail, but she did all the stuff for them. Jewel can do that for you if you want to do Iceland that way. And there's enough of a savings that she might say it's worth her effort. She can charge you little or nothing. And that can still make sense. If you're on a budget, you want to go do Iceland and be awesome, and you just can't afford this kind of price tag, rent a camper van, stay in campsites, stay away from hotels, stay away from restaurants, watch your budget very carefully. Okay. You can do that in a basic budget camper van rental and do 10 nights, including the fees for campsites, for about $2,000 for 2 people. Okay. That's doable. And that's way more awesome than signing up for this stupid Chautauqua institution thing, despite the fact that it's like at a fourth the cost. Okay. And please use our stuff. It's yours to steal and repurpose. Okay. So if you want in, it's about 1 hour after we started, 10 minutes late. If you want in, reach out to me and Jewel right away after this. Okay. Are we going to do part A and part B? Look, if I get 18 people saying I want in for part A and 18 saying they want in for part B, then that's what we're going to do. If it winds up being something different than that, we're going to take stock of where things stand in the next week or 10 days based on the number of people who say they want to go and what stuff they say they have an appetite for and what they want to be a part of. And then we'll see, do we have a critical quorum to make part A go? Do we have a critical quorum for part B? Are we going to nudge people to one side or the other and do one but not the other? If we don't have enough of a quorum to do this in a little bit of an organized fashion, then I'm just going to go with my 2 nephews and my niece and my brother-in-law and my son, and we're going to go be awesome without you guys. But we don't need, we only need a few to say I'm in, and then we'll get busy making it happen. And we don't have capacity for a lot. So between the minimum and the maximum, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room between those two. So fortune favors a prepared mind, Louis Pasteur, and quick reflexes, Matt McKissick. Okay, so whatever happens, I expect us to have it all figured out and done and nailed down before the holidays. Okay, and after that, if someone else wants to join, if we have capacity and if there's still availability in the hotels and so on, then Jewel will make every effort to accommodate you and fit you in after the fact. But expect this to be very ephemeral and to move quickly. Sneak peek. I just got back from the Galapagos a few weeks ago. Had no expectations going in. It blew my freaking mind. There's a Galapagos trip happening in October. And I think, Michelle, I think your feedback, I'm paraphrasing here, was if you don't move me to the top of the list, I will cut you. Something like that. So if you want to get to the top of the list, that list is already starting spontaneously, even though I haven't said it out loud before now. And we have 2 sold out Egypt trips coming up in February. Despite having some COVID cancellations, we had long enough waiting list. Those are sold out right now. But Jewel and I must do a Zoom talk like this for 2023 February Egypt. And that's going to happen before we go in February, probably in mid-January, if I were to guess. But these things start to get pretty full before we even officially announce them. So it has not been officially announced yet. So if you want to talk about that, get to me or Jewel to get on those lists also. We don't enjoy trying to fill these things. We just like planning them and then going and making it happen and doing the cool stuff. So our goal is to sell these out very quickly. And they do sell out very, very quickly, sometimes in less than 48 hours, rarely more than a week. And we try to keep our supply small. We try to do only a few of these every year. So that way we can still maintain a strict no assholes policy and keep it simple and keep it classy. thank you for hanging out with me for the last hour and hearing me yammer on. Any questions, comments? Anyone who did Iceland this year who's still on, please share anything you want to share. And I'll hang on until no one else is on the line.
Who are you, Matt?
An excellent question.
This is like, who are you? My God.
So as someone who's done Iceland independently, I'll share a couple of things as validation for what Matt is saying. I did Iceland as a 9 days around the ring road a couple of years ago, and later in the season, so not in the middle of summer. At that time, it was possible. We did it all with hotels by the day. Every day we'd pick a hotel, and we were able to do that, but that was off season. What he says about the weather is completely true. The weather, sometimes we literally had a day where it rained on us, the sun came out, we dried off. It then rained on us again, the sun came out a second time, we dried off, and that was all in one like 3 or 4 hour hike. So you do have to be prepared for the weather. So I'm considering going again because Iceland was so awesome. And I'm curious, like Matt is very, very good. Matt and Jewel are very good at digging up unexpected nooks and crannies. And there are some things that just don't make sense to do alone or as a couple. The last thing I'll say is, as someone who's 6'2", we tried the camper van approach and ended up in hotels because I didn't fit. We spent one night in the rooftop camper on top of our rented 4x4 with me sleeping in it diagonal and still not fitting. And I'm like, yeah, even though we rented a camper, let's start doing hotels. So that was a fail. Just be aware if you're going down that route, size matters. But if you're wondering about Iceland, and you at all like the outdoors, it's the most amazing outdoor place. It's one of the most amazing outdoor places I've been. The only places that remotely compare are Switzerland, in my opinion, are Switzerland and New Zealand, which are also pretty epic places.
Awesome. Thanks, Ethan. Much appreciated.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, Megan, come on video, Megan. Still there? Did we lose the other McChesneys? It was only you.
It's only me.
Okay. So, I mean, here's the deal. Megan, you and I are doing this, right? Give me a fist bump right there you go. Meet me. Okay. So Megan and I are doing it. The only question is who else is going to join us. That's really what this is about. Once we know who wants to come and we have some idea of your constraints, your preferences, your limitations, then we'll have a deeper conversation with that small group who say they're in, and we'll figure out how to make it. We'll figure out what version of all of this we put together that'll make it the best possible trip for those people and all of their preferences, constraints, and so on. But it's going to look a heck of a lot like what I've described right here, but it's going to be customized based on who that small group is that wants to come with me and my niece, Megan, and her two brothers, and her cousin, and her dad.
Matt, I just wanted to make a comment about traveling with Jewel. I think you've done a great job of explaining Iceland, and I hope everybody heard the weather part, because, it is what it is. The time I was there, the weather was fantastic. I understand that was, potentially an anomaly, and the day that it rained 80% of the day was more representative of what could happen. I guess the biggest surprise for me was traveling on a trip that was this much freedom, but having somebody who was constantly there solving every problem you could think of, most of them before you got into the problem itself, like going and making sure that you didn't have to wait in line for the hotels. I rode in the car with you and Joel for a couple of days, and it was just a continuous stream of problem anticipation and resolution before the events actually happened. So if you can sort of immerse yourself in the idea that someone else is taking care of you, and you can just drop yourself in the experience of Iceland, and that sounds attractive to you, this is a good way to travel, because all the boring complications are taken care of living and existing and going from place to place, and beyond how many donuts do you want to eat each day. You don't have to make a whole lot of decisions, or how many awesome things do you want to have versus how many naps do you want to have. it's just a nice way to travel as long as you give yourself over to it and just enjoy it. And I don't think the price reflects that sort of concierge service that you end up getting, but that's certainly what it felt like to me when I was traveling with you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's our superpower. We make the awesome happen. We could charge a lot more for this and go much more public about the whole thing, but that would stop being fun. It'd be different. It'd be a different group. It'd be a different vibe. And it truly is not what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
Matt, you're great.
That's true. You're an excellent judge of my greatness. Thanks,
I
Mandy.
am. I am. Looks amazing.
Thanks,
So
Mandy.
impressive.
Sorry you can't make it. Mandy has a job that goes straight through to August.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is a good thing, but it's on my high on my list, as well as Jerusalem and Petra. That's where I really want to go with you, Matt.
Say the word and I can make them happen. You know that.
No, you can.
Yep. Cool.
And see you very soon, I hope.
Yeah. 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Mexico. Well, drink a cerveza out of that.
Sounds
What else,
good.
guys?
Thank
Questions?
you so
Comments?
much.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Lisa's great.
Hope we see you.
Yeah, this was amazing. I'm blown away. I had no idea. I mean, I knew it was great just from everything Mandy and Amy and Janine have said, but wow.
Yeah, I got them fooled.
Yeah. If you haven't gone, go. It's incredible. And you'll come back very comfortable with, I've done a thorough job of Iceland. You know, I didn't come back after my trip and think, wow, I really missed a lot of Iceland. You know, there was some of it I wanted to see more, but it's a nice, thorough tour of the island. So.
Looks amazing. All right.
Here, everyone.
Got a lot to think about. Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
See ya.
Hey, Matt, it's Carol Centenario. I have a question for you.
Carol, I got an answer for you.
Awesome. So the photos that you were showing us,
Yep.
were they a combination of both Southern and Northern? Were they mostly Southern?
Oh, they were
mostly-
random and totally mixed up.
Okay,
I spent far less time on this than appearances would suggest. They're completely random and mixed up. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like all the stuff, the Thorsmork piece, for example, where I gave the 24 hours, like that was all part B. That was all in the South. Otherwise, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you hadn't been there, I wonder if you'd be able to tell. I mean, they are visually different, but both stunning.
Yeah, my sort of qualitative, again, it's a difference of degrees, but I describe the North and the West as more remote and sort of stark, and the South is more maybe breathtaking in its extremes. But I don't know if you'd agree with that. But that sounds like I'm giving a nod to the South as better, and I don't feel that way at all. But
Yeah.
the remoteness, the remote starkness of the North and the West fjords is a different thing altogether. That's
Yeah.
even by Icelandic standards.
Hey, Matt, it's Tom Krillman. How you doing?
Awesome, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing good. I love the photos. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.
I have two questions.
I got
One,
two answers.
I know you do. The first is, as we get closer to this, are you going to be able to give us an idea of the type of things we should be packing, weather gear wise, it sounds like?
Oh yeah, if you, I thought it was in the email that I sent one of the links, but it might have been one of the more detailed ones. But I actually gave a list of like, here's a dozen things you should consider that might not be obvious.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's not a complete list. It's here's the stuff you might not consider, like sunscreen. You know, like
Right.
my son got a pretty bad sunburn, despite me saying, "Hey," me being the dad the whole time, like, "Hey, buddy, put sunscreen on." Oh, I'm good. We're, you know, so like sunscreen, and I forget what the other ones were, but
Okay.
there's about a dozen or so things that would not be obvious.
Okay. The second question is, for those of us who are not hiker Uber trackers,
Yep.
myself included there,
Yeah.
is there things that if we decide not to go on a 7 or a 10-mile hike,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
there things that can be done closer to the,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. I should emphasize that a little bit better. The answer is absolutely. Okay.
Okay.
You're not going to do the 19-mile hike that Matt and Jim did and that I bailed on. Mike Duran, the whole Duran family came with us. Okay.
okay,
And his youngest daughter had just had surgery like a month before to have like something larger than a lemon removed from her foot.
oh, wow,
Okay.
yeah,
And he asked me at the critical moment, like, were they going to make it or not? The question he put to me was, if she comes, like I said, look, there's no question coming to Iceland is better than not coming to Iceland for her. You know, like coming to Iceland without having that just removed from your foot is better than, you know, coming then. He asked me, how many days would she have nothing to do on the itinerary options if her foot isn't substantially better? And I was like, oh, 0. She'll be fine. Every day there'll be something awesome for her to do, no question about it. So there's no need to dial that up to an 11 or even to a 5. And a huge portion of this is you drive, you go to the pull off, and then you walk 5 minutes to look at the breathtaking thing, or you walk a mile on a very even little trail or path to see the thing. So I don't think you're going to be in any way. I don't want to say you're not limited. You're not going to do everything, but I think this is a fully awesome trip that you need not like. Yeah, I fully encourage you to go on that basis. Matt, you're still on. Any comments on that, Jules?
Yeah, I would say a surprising number of the days where there are these sort of, you know, epic, ridiculously athletic hikes, there's a limited, you know, 10% of the walking, 80% of the views version of that same hike. You know, you can take the whole 19-mile hike and climb your way back and forth over the mountain, or you can walk up the first mile, which includes half of the waterfalls you're going to see, and then you can walk back up the final half the next day. Yeah. You know, so there was no day that you wouldn't have been able to fully entertain yourself without doing some sort of ridiculously athletic, you know, life-threatening hike.
If we didn't tell you about the epic stuff, I don't think you would have noticed a hole, anything missing. And my wife Kim joined us for the last half, and she didn't do any. I mean, she'd be right with you, Tom, on those. She didn't even presume to do any of the hardcore stuff.
And there were only, and Matt, I mean, at least on the one we went on, there were only 2 days that I would say that you needed above nominal conditioning to participate in 100% of what was done. 2 total days.
Stoftafell and Thorsmark.
Yeah, the rest of it,
and you can
always
just drive a dune buggy in a river.
You'll make it. Yeah.
I was just going to add too, like I'm probably kind of like you, Tom, like I'm not an outdoorsy person at all. Like I like nature and pictures and, you know, it's beautiful and I'm excited to go back, but I don't hike. I use Matt's packing list because I had to like buy waterproof hiking shoes and I didn't even know what merino wool clothes were and had to buy that, you know, before I went, and was totally comfortable and adaptable to the weather. And I don't go to the bathroom outside, you know, things like I never had to. So, and then like when I sent a picture to my mom and my sister of the tent, and Thors were like Matt was talking about, I don't sleep in tents. So when my sister's like, OMG, did you really sleep in a tent? And I'm like with you in capital letters, and it was awesome. Like it was super comfortable, and I was really nervous about it, but you know, it was great. And there's totally just tons of awesome stuff to walk a couple miles or I never even had to worry about like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to find some leaves or something. Like it was all good. Yeah.
Anything else, guys? Matt Moore, hey, thanks for, and the others who already hopped off, thanks for joining and commenting on the margins. I think it's super helpful.
Matt, thank you.
Yeah, happy to help. I'm here because all awesome people should go to Iceland at least once in their life. So whatever I can do to encourage people to do that, that's why I showed up. It's,
awesome. Appreciate it very much.
It's a life experience that everybody deserves, assuming you don't fit in the SO category, in which case you don't deserve it.
Yeah. And it's so freaking easy. Like, I mean, you could like leave, if you're in, those of us in Warren County, you could have an early dinner tomorrow and then drive to the Toronto airport and catch like the 11:30 red eye straight to Reykjavik and be there 6 o'clock on Friday morning. And it's like
And
a $500 flight round trip, and it's direct, and it's a 5-hour
it's
flight.
easy.
Like, it's so easy and it's so awesome. And why do I not do it 4 times a year, having just said all that, right?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Especially when the aurora borealis is happening.
yeah, yeah.
Matt, thank you so much. We were in Iceland once for 4 days and it wasn't enough. We need to go back. Thank you for your presentation tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope we see you.
Thank you.
Susan.
Thanks, Matt. We're gonna drop. Thanks so much.
Okay, awesome. Good to see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
See ya.
Thanks, Matt.
Night, guys.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.